Stories that time forgot.
No one noticed that $6 billion were missing until one man counted the pennies twice. The accountant who uncovered the greatest bank heist in history. Deep within the bowels of the global financial system exists an invisible creature, the forensic accountant. He doesn't wear Armani suits or hunt in the shark tanks of trading floors filled with flickering monitors. He operates in basements lit by cold fluorescence, surrounded by servers processing transactions at speeds the human brain cannot fathom. His weapon isn't intuition or gut instinct. It's mathematical patience. And in 2015, on the -34th floor of Global Trust Bank's Central Tower in Zurich, a man named Klaus Richter was about to prove that mathematical patience can topple empires built on pure arrogance. Klaus was no hero. He was a 57-year-old man with a frayed tie and a pathological obsession with decimals. He'd spent 32 years auditing balance sheets, first in a rural branch in Stuttgart, then Frankfurt, and finally Zurich. While investment bankers raked in seven-figure bonuses for high-stakes gambles, Klaus received a free cup of coffee on Fridays and the silent respect of three colleagues who understood the gravity of his work. His specialty was overnight reconciliation, that magic window between the closing bell and the Asian Open where the books must balance with absolute precision. Any discrepancy over a tenth of a cent triggered an alarm. Anything less went unnoticed. Klaus was the only one looking at the anything less. The heist didn't start as a robbery. It started as an innovation. In 2012, Global Trust Derivatives Desk launched a product called Velocity Shield, a complex financial instrument designed to hedge large corporations against fluctuations. In theory, it was elegant insurance. In practice, it was a money-printing machine for the bank, boasting 20% margins. The architect was Julian Croft, a 34-year-old prodigy out of Harvard and Goldman Sachs, whose ambition was matched only by his contempt for compliance. Croft didn't steal. He optimized. And on Wall Street, optimization is a dangerous euphemism. The fraud's engineering was as elegant as it was perverse. Croft and his team identified a crack in the international clearing system, the time lag, 47 seconds. In those 47 seconds, a transaction existed in accounting limbo confirmed by the sender, but not yet validated by the receiver. Croft designed an algorithm to exploit this void. Every afternoon at 4:59 p.m., the algorithm executed a massive buy of US dollars against Russian rubles through an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The transaction appeared on Global Trust's books as a legitimate asset. But 46 seconds later, just before SWIFT validation, the algorithm reversed the trade selling rubles for dollars via a Singapore account. The net result on the bank's books: a fictitious gain of $320,000 per cycle. The real-world result, zero. Nothing had happened. Except Global Trust had booked a profit that didn't exist. But Croft didn't stop there. To make the fraud sustainable, he had to bury the actual losses inherent in the Velocity Shield product. Instead of hiding losses in a dark pool, he strategically redistributed them across thousands of legitimate transactions. A real loss of $100 million was fragmented into 10,000 microtransactions of $10,000 each, scattered among real client trades. It was like pouring a liter of black ink into a lake invisible to the naked eye, but detectable to a spectrometer. The bank's fraud alerts were calibrated for transfers exceeding $1 million. Nothing Croft did ever topped 15,000. For 28 months, the scheme ran with Swiss precision. Croft and his inner circle amassed $2.3 billion in commissions. The bank reported record earnings quarter after quarter. Shareholders cheered. The financial press crowned Croft as the next Warren Buffett. No one questioned the numbers because the numbers, on the surface, were flawless. External auditors from Pricewaterhouse reviewed the statements and signed off. The fraud wasn't in the big numbers. It was in the forgotten decimals. It was January 2015 when Klaus Richter spotted the first crack. It wasn't a hunch. It was a rounding error. While reconciling overnight accounts on January 30th, he noticed the total balance of the emerging markets derivatives portfolio ended in 0.8742. But when compared to the previous day's balance 0.8745, he saw a discrepancy of 0.03 of a cent. In a universe of trillion-dollar transactions, 0.03 are irrelevant. The system rounds them up. But Klaus didn't trust automation. He had a personal rule. Any cumulative discrepancy exceeding 1 cent in a single week required an investigation. He reviewed the previous 7 days. The daily discrepancies were microscopic, 2 thousandths, 5 thousandths, 1 thousandth. But added together, they totaled 28 cents. 28 cents in a portfolio valued at $860 billion. Statistically impossible. In a perfectly balanced system, random discrepancies should cancel each other out. But Klaus's findings were all negative. Klaus didn't alert compliance. He knew they'd perform a superficial review, find nothing over $1 million, and kill the file. Instead, he did something more dangerous. He decided to reverse engineer the mechanism. For the next 3 weeks, he worked in total silence. He arrived at 5 a.m. before the traders took their seats. He downloaded full trading logs, 50 gigabyte files no one else bothered to touch. And he found one. Every business day at 4:59 p.m. and 53 seconds New York time, 2 twin transactions appeared 46 seconds apart. On February 20th, Klaus identified the ghost account, G to Cayman 7 Alpha, an entity registered in the Caymans supposedly for tax hedging. Every morning, it transferred 98% of those gains to a Singapore account called Pacific Horizon Holdings. Klaus traced it to Monaco. The ultimate beneficiaries, Julian Croft and his 4 accomplices. But Klaus made a fatal mistake. On February 23rd, while analyzing the logs, he left a terminal window open with his tracking script. A systems admin from Croft's department, performing routine maintenance, saw the unusual activity on the audit server. He alerted Croft. That same night, Klaus received an email from the Director of Compliance summoning him to an urgent meeting the following morning. Klaus didn't show up. Instead, he spent the next 48 hours in his office without sleep, compiling irrefutable evidence. At 3 a.m. on February 25th, he sent the encrypted report to the Swiss Federal Banking Commission, the Financial Conduct Authority, and the Department of Justice. Then he cleared his browser history, powered down his workstation, and exited the building through the loading dock to avoid the security cameras. At 9 a.m., Julian Croft was arrested in his Zurich apartment while eating breakfast. Swiss federal agents found documents in his private vault detailing not just the fraud, but a plan to transfer $4.7 billion. Croft and his accomplices faced charges of massive fraud, money laundering, and international conspiracy. Global Trust Bank was fined $3 billion and lost its license to operate in the United States. The bank's reputation was incinerated. Klaus Richter never testified publicly. He received an anonymous whistleblower reward of $120 million. He retired to a house by Lake Atitlán in Guatemala, where he now grows organic coffee and teaches mathematics to village children. His neighbors know him only as Mr. Klaus, the quiet German man who always counts his change with obsessive precision. The mechanism of the heist was brilliant in its simplicity. Croft simply exploited human weaknesses, the obsession with big numbers and contempt for decimals. Klaus Richter succeeded because he understood a fundamental truth. The devil isn't in the big details, he's in the abandoned decimals. While the geniuses of Wall Street built houses of cards, Klaus counted the grains of sand. He discovered someone had been removing 1 grain every night. The greatest bank robbery in history wasn't discovered by a spy. It was discovered by a man who understood that in mathematics, nothing disappears. Klaus Richter vanished, but the question still haunts the financial districts. How many of today's fortunes are built on those grains of sand? If you discovered an error capable of sinking an empire, would you have Klaus's courage, or would you keep enjoying your free coffee? Leave your answer in the comments. We want to know what you would have done. Like and subscribe to discover more stories that time forgot.